Last week, I forgot to pay my car tax, and I really started getting very stressed, giving myself a hard time, calling myself lots of horrible names because I haven't done it. What advice would you have given me to how to deal with that situation?
Well, it's a good question, this, because you actually already know this, and I'm going to try and show you how you do already know this. Firstly, there is the stress of the situation itself, right? And it's difficult to avoid that. What you can do is to look at what you can now do, given that you don't have an MOT or a tax. So problem solve. But that's not the bit I'm going to focus on. What the bit I'm going to focus on is, supposing a friend who you really care about came to you and they said, Alistair, I'm in a bit of a tangle here because I've forgotten to get my car tax. Now I need an MOT. What would you say to them?
Well, I would first ask them if there's anything that I can do to help out. But if there wasn't anything practical that I could do to help him or support him, I'd probably say to him, well, don't worry, it's not a huge thing, like everybody forgets stuff, why don't we go down the pub and have a drink and talk about something else.
What you wouldn't say is all the things that went through your head. And you wouldn't say them because if you did, either that would be the end of the friendship or they'd be devastated by that. That wouldn't help them at all, actually.
Yeah.
That would be quite useless to them because they're already struggling. They don't need somebody to come and kick them when they're already struggling. And it's the same. I can give you another example of this. If you had two teachers to look after your child and they're both equally competent, and one says, I'll tell you what, when your child makes a mistake, forgets things, doesn't do his homework, we're going to make sure that he really understands that. We're going to give him detention and punish him quite heavily, come down on him very hard, so he'll never make mistakes, right? Another teacher says to you, well, what we're going to do with your child is we're going to help him learn from his mistakes. We want him to be honest about mistakes so he can actually be upfront about them, not hide them, not run away from them, not be frightened of making them, And we're going to support him, and of course we want him to do his homework when he's told. But the key is that your child is going to have confidence in learning. That's what we want. Now, which teacher would you want?
Yeah, of course.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah,
So all of us in our heart, we know intuitively, we have what we call intuitive wisdom, that when it gets tough, become a friend, okay? But the problem is we can be so upset, so stressed, so frustrated, so angry, so frightened that those feelings take over and then they get directed at us. So what we have to do is to learn to just stop the process for a moment, just take a couple of slow breaths so you break that pattern, just focus and think to yourself, now, how do I really want to deal with this stress? Because it is a stress, okay? How would I want to deal with it? If I was at my very best, at my most confident, at my most compassionate, if I was to be a really good friend to somebody, how would I deal with this? One of the things is noticing, paying attention. I mean, there is a technical term which is called mindfulness, and people can go and train in mindfulness, but it's learning to pay attention to what's going on in your mind, particularly when emotions are very strongly aroused, because it's very easy for us to get carried away on the currents of these emotions, okay? So we get angry, we just keep thinking angry thoughts. And so one of the things is to notice that has happened in your mind, that anger has erupted in your mind, and just pull back from it slightly and observe this eruption as opposed to being in it, okay? Or observe your disappointment or frustration with yourself rather than just being in the flow of it. There's a Buddhist monk called Matthew Ricard, and he points out that we only exist in the present moment. And if you think about it, you don't exist in the moment just gone, nor in the moment to come. So this is the only place you exist. Everything else, you're taking away from your present moment. So this consciousness that only exists in the present moment is like water. Now, water can carry a poison or a medicine, but it isn't a poison or a medicine. It's a carrier. Your mind, your consciousness can be flushed with anger or anxiety or joy or desire, all kinds of stuff. But this point of consciousness in the present moment, if you can learn how to pay attention to the present moment, and that these emotions are like colors flushing through you, but not to identify with them, that can be really helpful. So taking a breath, seeing what's happening in your mind, pulling back. Then the next step really is learning this kindness, this soothing, this compassionate approach, which then has effect on calming down and working with the things that you're feeling threatened and stressful about. compassion works is really through very ancient systems in your brain. About 120 million years ago, mammals appeared on the earth, and one of the things that mammals do is they care for their young. Okay, so when the infant is distressed, the parent returns to the infant and wraps it up, cuddles it, or whatever, and this then calms it down. And this system of being calmed down by the care and the kindness of another is fundamental to the human brain. We know that from the day that you're born to the day that you die, the kindness of others will have a huge impact on you. We know that children who grow up in loving, caring homes, their brains develop in a different way to children who grow up in neglectful or abusive homes. So the importance of affection in our life is very, very important indeed. So we understand that there is this system which responds to kindness, to understanding, to support, to caring. And the point is that, just as I mentioned earlier, what you imagine will stimulate your brain. If you imagine and focus on these qualities of kindness either in you, or you could imagine a kind voice talking to you, that will affect your brain. That will activate that system which has this calming effect, which is designed to be soothing when you encounter somebody who's caring. So all of us, I think, when we turn to other people when we're distressed, if they're kind and caring, calms us down. Or if they're critical and bullying, then it doesn't calm us down, it makes us feel worse. So it's using an ancient system in your brain which is based upon caring and the power of caring to calm threat.
So this self-soothing part of our brain, that's something that's activated every time we encounter somebody who's caring for us.
Yeah.
But it's also activated when we can actually activate that ourselves, is basically what you're saying.
Very much so. And again, if I use the example that we mentioned earlier, if you see something naughty on the telly, all right, that will activate your arousal. But you can imagine it. Just have a fantasy, and that will activate your arousal system. So the point is, what you think about and the way you think about is operating on these different systems in your brain, right? So if you're operating on yourself like a bully and telling yourself off, being horrible to yourself, that's just going to make you feel terrible. But if you learn to operate on yourself and with yourself as your best friend, taking responsibility when you need to, it's not about not doing that, but just trying your best to be helpful, to be encouraging, to be supportive when things are tough, that's going to activate systems in your brain that will help you get through your difficulties.